You're listening to The Jacob Volk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobVolk. Here he is, Jacob Volk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Volk Show. I am the Jacob Volk, and you're not. I've got to start with an apology. On yesterday's show, I completely forgot to preview Suns Clippers. I don't know how I forgot to do that. I never forget to do that. I guess I was still coming down from the high of being at Game 6 of Lightning Islanders. But I am sorry, that's a bad job by me. The one thing I'll say is, I would have gotten it wrong. I would have picked the Suns. I mean, the keys to the game were pretty obvious. Chris Paul needed to come back and hit the ground running. And Paul George really needed to step up, along with his supporting cast. I mean, going into that game, you're thinking there's no way that Paul George is going to be able to do this by himself. He's going to need some help from guys like Reggie Jackson, Ivica Zubac, Terrence Mann, etc., etc. It was pretty obvious, but I should have mentioned it. I am sorry. Look, Paul George did play well at first glance. He did have 27 points, 15 rebounds, and 8 assists. But he did turn the ball over 6 times. You take a look at his field goal and three-point percentage, it was not good. He shot 9 for 26 from the field, that's 34.5%. And 3 for 11 from beyond the arc, that's 27.3%. George has scored over 25 points in the last 8 Clippers playoff games. I think that's a franchise record. I don't think anyone else has done that. But you gotta look at how he's getting those points. He's getting them by shooting a lot. Now, should he be shooting a lot? The answer is yes. With Kawhi Leonard out, there's no one else that you want taking those shots. You know, I just find it hard to believe that a guy like George, who has been shooting the ball inefficiently in this series, is going to lead the Clippers to victory. I understand that they've been down 2-0 in these playoffs before. They were down 2-0 against the Mavs, and they were down 2-0 against the Jazz. They're in the Western Conference Finals now. They had Kawhi Leonard. So you can live with George not being great. He did not shoot the ball well from beyond the arc against the Mavericks. No one talked about it. Was great against the Jazz, give him credit. But against the Suns, with Paul George as the Clippers' best player by far and away, not even close, he has been atrocious. 38.7% from the field, 32.4% from beyond the arc, 72% from the free throw line. The idea that Paul George is back to being playoff P and he exercised his demons is just wrong. The Clippers are still trailing in this series. Can they win tomorrow? Of course they can. No question. You can't count them out. They've come back from 2-0 twice. But George just needs to play better. This idea that Paul George is stepping up is just wrong. You want to know why the Clippers won yesterday? I'll tell you why. It was because of the supporting cast. It was not because of Paul George. And anyone watching the game would tell you that. You've got Reggie Jackson shooting over 50% from the field. He had 23 points. Ivica Zubac dominated the glass. Grabbed every loose board. Gave the Clippers a lot of second chance points. I was really impressed with him. Terrence Mann in the third quarter really stepped up. The Clippers were down by 2. Mann showed that he can play. He had 10 points in the third quarter, 5 for 6 from the field. It was because of him that the Clippers found themselves with a 15-point lead at one point in the third quarter. You could turn the game off and focus on hockey. This notion that Paul George has played well in this series is just wrong. Alright, he has the iconic moment of failure. Missing the 2 free throws. The raw numbers are impressive, but once you dig into them, you realize that he needs to be better. I've been very disappointed in Paul George all throughout his Clippers playoff tenure. I think he is being overrated. Last year in the bubble, I get that it was hard. Okay? That took a big toll on him mentally. He was open about that. I get that. But, and I know that this is going to come off as insensitive. Okay, I'm a big advocate of mental health awareness. I think that we as a country have done a terrible job with it. But when you're making over $33 million and you're the second best player on a team, you've got to step up. I get that it was hard, but quite honestly, I'd have been more understanding if you had just sat out the bubble rather than go into the bubble and no-show. Once you make that commitment to play, you really need to step up, and George didn't. I do think we're overlooking that in our evaluation of George. And in this series against the Suns, he has been dreadful. He has not shot the ball well. Yes, he's scoring a lot. Yes, he's getting his numbers. But of course he is. He's getting those shots. Who else is going to get those shots? It has to be Paul George. He has not played well in this series. He has not played well in the playoffs for the Clippers. In fact, I'm going to say it right now. The Los Angeles Clippers will not win a title with Paul George on the roster. I know it's weird to criticize a guy and say that after his team just won by 14 points and George nearly had a triple-double. I get that. But to me, the eye test failed him. The eye test doesn't lie. I was not impressed with George. Defensively, I was. Okay, the Clippers did a great job on the Suns defensively. Give George credit, give Zubac credit, give Reggie Jackson credit. We know that George can step up defensively. But it's like Ben Simmons. How much can you put up with shoddy offensive outputs and great defense. You've got to be able to do both. I mean, George is a great defender, but if he dialed that back to very good or good, and you told me that his offensive efficiency would go up, I'd sign up for that in a heartbeat. But look, the Clippers as a team did a great job on the Suns. They limited the Suns to just 39% shooting, 31% from beyond the arc. DeAndre Ayton was the high man for the Suns. He had 18 points. I mean, the Clippers were really good defensively, but even then, I feel like that comes with a little bit of a caveat. Devin Booker was playing with a mask. This was Chris Paul's first game playing since getting the coronavirus. So naturally, he's not going to be at 100%. But even then, Paul played well. 15 points and 12 assists. Did a really good job ball handling, good job setting up his teammates. I was impressed with what Paul did. He played 38 minutes, too. That was more than Monty Williams wanted to play him. I mean, he had to play those minutes because Cameron Payne got hurt. Payne only played 4 minutes. He has a left ankle injury. And we all know that Payne is a big part of what the Suns do. You want to tell me that none of that is the Clippers' fault? You're right. The Clippers didn't intend to injure Booker and Payne, and it's not the Clippers' fault that Chris Paul tested positive for the coronavirus. But I do feel like all of that is noteworthy. Yes, the Clippers won this game. Yes, they still have a pulse in this series. But by the eye test, the Clippers didn't impress me a lot. The Suns didn't either. That was a very unenjoyable basketball game to watch. I was more into the hockey game. I've said this before, I'll say it again. The Stanley Cup playoffs this year are a lot more interesting to me than the NBA playoffs. Now that we've gotten to where we are in both playoffs, I have more interest in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I'm not just saying that because the Islanders are still alive. If the Lightning win tonight, that Stanley Cup Finals will interest me. I'll be into Lightning Canadiens. I'll be much more into that than any NBA Finals. I'll tell you that right now. But now it's time to preview Hawks-Bucks. If the Hawks are going to win this game, they've got to shoot better from 3. They've got to design some better looks, some quick pick and pops, Trae Young driving to the hoop, then dishing it out to a shooter like Kevin Huerter or Bogdan Bogdanovic or Danilo Gallinari, a guy like that. The Hawks shot just 25% from 3. Now the Bucks did a great job defensively, but the Hawks need to move the ball around more, get their shooters more involved, get them in a rhythm, and get them contributing. Because I don't see the Hawks winning another game where they shoot just 25% from 3. But that does play into what the Bucks need to do to win. They've got to get Chris Middleton going. They've got to get him wide open looks. Chris Middleton shot 0 for 9 from beyond the arc. If you take Middleton's 0 for 9 performance out of the equation, the Bucks still don't shoot well from beyond the arc, 29.6%, but it is better than what the Hawks shot. That does mean something. I mean, Middleton needs to step it up from 3. I mean, granted, Pat Connaughton does too. He was 0 for 4 from beyond the arc. If he's not going to hit a 3-pointer, What's he doing on the floor? But I'm going to focus on Middleton. He really needs to step it up. If he's not going to shoot well, find other ways to get involved. Hit mid-range jumpers, penetrate, play good defense. Middleton did none of that on Wednesday. He's got to step it up, and I think he will. I think the Bucks are going to tie up the series here. Alright, now I'll give you some NHL Vault talk. And I'll start with Golden Knights Canadiens. The Canadiens clinched their Stanley Cup Finals appearance. First time since 1993. First time that a Canadian team has been in a Cup Finals since 2011, when the Bruins beat the Canucks and Vancouver rioted. And this was a really exciting game. Like, this was a game that you were into from the word go. I've said this for a while. It was proven yesterday. You've got the Stanley Cup playoffs with a lot more juice than the NBA playoffs. You can't tell me that that hockey game was less exciting than that basketball game. I mean, good for the Canadians, really. It's been a long time since we've had a Canadian team in the Cup Finals. It's been a long time since a Canadian team has won the Cup Finals. The NHL does better when Canadian teams are good. But I feel like this series is going to be remembered more for Golden Knights' mistakes than the really good play of the Canadiens. Game 3, the asinine play by Marc-Andre Fleury late sends that game into overtime. Then the Habs win it. Game 5, after Robin Lehner stands on his head, you go back to Fleury. Just terrible decisions by the Golden Knights. I mean, I'll say this. That game yesterday was a really well-played game. Both teams played really, really well. They both played well enough to win. The first goal, the power play goal, was a great shot by Shea Weber. Great screen by Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Again, another mistake by the Golden Knights. Alec Martinez couldn't clear the puck on the backhand. It went right to Shea Weber and he ripped it home. Then you've got the Golden Knights tying it up. Riley Smith with an excellent redirection of a Shea Theodore shot. That was just a great play by Riley Smith. That very easily could have hit the post. He very easily could have missed on the deflection. It was played perfectly by the Habs. Smith just made a good play. Now I'll say this. As much as I wanted Robin Lehner to start, he wasn't great. The Cole Caulfield goal, that's a goal he should have. I mean, a great play by Caulfield to tip the puck over Braden McNabb's stick. And then he snipes it home, but Caulfield had no angle on that shot. If you're Lehner and you position yourself right, you've got to cut off the angle. You've got to make Caulfield cut and beat you honestly, not just snipe it by you. Instead, Caulfield roofs it over Lehner's glove. Bad job by Lehner, but let me tell you, Cole Caulfield's the real deal. Habs fans have every right to be excited about him. Then the Golden Knights got on the offense. They got some really good opportunities. They were more aggressive in this game than they were in any other game in this series. And that's the right thing to do. When it's Game 6, an elimination game, you better show up. The Golden Knights tied it on a really nice play by the defense. Alex Pietrangelo with a good shot on Price. Price couldn't handle it, and Alec Martinez just poked it through. Again, a great job by the Golden Knights in being aggressive, getting their forecheck going, crashing the net, making Price work. That was the right thing to do. Then in overtime, the Canadiens do a great job of skating. They win the face-off and just go, go, go. After Price made a couple really nice saves, the Habs were moving. Good puck movement to get into the zone. Good puck movement to beat Lehner. And Artturi Lehkonen no longer needs to buy a drink in the province of Quebec. I mean, what's the saying? All you need is a hot goalie in the Stanley Cup playoffs and you'll go far. The Canadiens have the hottest goalie in the NHL right now in Carey Price. Whoever ends up going against him in the Cup Finals is going to have their work cut out for him. The Lightning's high-powered offense or the Islanders' methodical offense. I think that's the best adjective to use. Speaking of Islanders Lightning, it seems to be shaping up well for the Islanders. I'll say that. I don't care that it's in Tampa. Nikita Kucherov may not play. John Cooper, when he was asked this morning about Kucherov's status, didn't say one way or another whether Kucherov is going to play or not. If Kucherov doesn't play, the Islanders have a great shot of winning this game. In the 17 games that the Lightning have played in these playoffs, Kucherov has 27 points. Kucherov's absence was a big reason why the Lightning lost Game 6. It's going to be very tough to make up for that absence. I don't care that Brayden Point is on an epic goal streak. I don't care that they have Andre Palat, Victor Hedman, Yanni Gourde, Steven Stamkos, etc., etc. Nikita Kucherov is a force. Without him, it's very tough to envision the Lightning winning. I mean, this is it. This is for all the marbles. This is where legends are made. We know what both teams need to do to win. The Lightning need to bring the pressure offensively, not take their foot off the gas, and just go, go, go. It's what they did in Game 5, and it worked. Meanwhile, the Islanders need their defense to play great. Varlamov needs to step up. Pelech and Pulock are going to need to step up. Matt Barzal is going to need to play great again like he did in Game 6. We know all that. But this is what you dream of when you're a kid playing pond hockey. Or you're a kid just shooting in your driveway or your backyard. You dream of giving your team an opportunity to play in the Stanley Cup Finals. This is the first Game 7 with a Stanley Cup Finals berth on the line that the Islanders have been in since 1975. That year, the Flyers were up 3-0. The Islanders came back, forced a Game 7, but in the Spectrum, the Flyers won 4-1. Then they beat the Sabres in 6 games in the Stanley Cup Final. This is uncharted waters here. I've said this before. This is the most exciting era of Islanders hockey since the dynasty. If you're not old enough to remember the dynasty, and a lot of Islanders fans aren't. Because they're a younger fan base. This is the best that you've ever seen the Islanders. So go nuts. Get excited. Live and die with every shot. That's your right as a fan. This is a Game 7. This is for all the marbles. But I do just want to say this. Regardless of what happens in this Game 7, this Islanders season was an unmitigated success. They proved that last year wasn't a fluke. They proved that they can hang with the big boys. They beat a really good Bruins team. They're one win away from beating a great Lightning team. I mean, I'll say this. This is how the Hollywood movie would be written. You're closing out an arena with a Stanley Cup Finals run. An arena that it looked like you'd never play at again once upon a time. When the Islanders moved to the Barclays Center, did you ever think they'd play at the Coliseum again? All those years of mismanagement by Garth Snow and Mike Milbury. Terrible owners. The Gang of Four. John Spano. John Pickett towards the end. Charles Wang. The Lighthouse Project. Setback after setback after setback. To quote the great Sam Spade, ably played by Humphrey Bogart and the Maltese Falcon, this is the stuff that dreams are made of. Again, it really doesn't matter what happens here. This season is a success. Do you want to win? Of course. No one's rooting for an Islanders win more than me. I promise you. I just don't want to see any Islanders fans get really upset because you have nothing to be upset about. This is a successful season. Will it hurt if you lose? Absolutely. And you have a right to be upset over the loss. But don't curse up a storm on Twitter. Don't call for anyone's head. This is a moment 37 years in the making. Cherish it. Savor every moment. Watch it with someone you care about. Live it up. Eat and drink whatever you want. This is your moment. Enjoy it. This is where legends and villains are made. And I think that the Islanders are going to come out as legends. That's right. I'm going with the upset. The New York Islanders will beat the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight. Let's go back to the NBA now, because the Dallas Mavericks made a couple big moves. Jason Kidd is their coach, and Nico Harrison is their GM. If the name Nico Harrison isn't familiar to you, that's perfectly okay. Mark Cuban is hiring him from Nike. Yeah, Nike, the shoe company. So just to be clear, you have someone who used to work at a shoe company running an NBA team. Was the beer vendor at Section 103 unavailable? Because that guy is just as qualified to run the Mavericks as Harrison is. If Nico Harrison wants to make the jump from Nike to the NBA, that's fine. I have no problem with that. There's nothing wrong with a career change. Presumably, Harrison has some good relationships with players around the league. That's fine. In fact, if you even want to go to the front office as, like, assistant GM or some title like that, I have no problem with that. But to be GM, to have a big voice in that room with no experience? No, that doesn't work for me. You can't hire someone from a shoe company to be your GM. I'd rather you hire a broadcaster. Like, people are focusing on Jason Kidd. They're focusing on the wrong thing. Focus on Harrison. Focus on this guy with no experience, no qualifications, no anything, now running the show with the Mavericks. Is he going to run the show with Michael Finley? Who has final say? What's going on here? Mark Cuban has been criticized for letting people influence him with the Mavericks that really shouldn't be influencing him. Like that gambler that was mentioned in that Athletic story. Let me tell you, those people were right to criticize him. You push out two incredibly well-respected minds in Donnie Nelson and Rick Carlisle. People who have been around the NBA for years, for decades. And now you have a guy as your GM with no NBA experience whatsoever. He's close with players. That's the last guy you want as your GM. GMs are supposed to separate their personal friendships from what's best for the team. You can like certain players, that's fine, but if it's clear that that player should be moved, you've got to move him. Remember what Brodie Van Wagenen did for the Mets? This could be that all over again. The Nico Harrison hire is terrible. The Jason Kidd move, I actually don't mind. I've seen a lot of people get upset over that. I actually think it can work. Look, Kidd has gotten rave reviews for what he's done with the Lakers. He seems to have rehabilitated his stock. His stock was at an all-time low after being fired from the Bucks. Now seeing what Budenholzer's doing with that team, yeah, that's not a great look for Kidd. But you know what? I'm okay with giving him another chance. I mean, you've got to realize this. Jason Kidd came up with the Mavericks. He won a title with the Mavericks. He was an all-star for the Mavericks. I understand what happened with the Nets. Franchise legend. Then he makes the failed power play, is traded to the Bucks, and it leaves a bad taste in every Nets fan's mouth. Hell, I still have a bad taste over it. When I think back to those Jason Kidd-led teams, yeah, that stunt that he pulled is prevalent in my mind. But I'll say this, it does seem like Kidd has matured. He could have been gifted the Portland Trailblazers job. Damian Lillard wanted him, he was vocal about it. Kidd said no. That's not how I want to get another head coaching job. That shows personal growth. There was a time in Jason Kidd's life where if a star player was angling for him to be the next head coach, he would have ran for that job. Wouldn't have given it a second thought. I mean, I'll say this. Think about how Jason Kidd played. And think about how Luka Doncic plays. Doncic is a better shooter. but they're both excellent penetrators, were great rebounders, great playmakers, great ball handlers. I'll say this, if you were to write down on a piece of paper Jason Kidd's play style, it would look a lot like Luka Doncic. Also, what has Jason Kidd sought at every stop? Power. He wanted it in Brooklyn. He didn't get it. He wanted it in Milwaukee. He got it. Does he have power with the Lakers? I'm not sure. But I'll say this, Kidd isn't going to have a lot of power within the Mavericks. They just hired a new GM. He may or may not work in tandem with Michael Finley, I don't know. There's that gambler that has a lot of influence. Mark Cuban's outspoken, has a mind of his own, very overrated owner. Kidd isn't going to have a lot of power. So I think this actually shows great personal growth for Kidd in taking this job. This is his last chance. If Jason Kidd can't make noise with the Mavericks, he'll be a career assistant coach. But you know what? If the Mavericks can go on a big run or two, Kidd's coaching future will be in really good shape. Moving on now to a really interesting report by Jeremy Woo of Sports Illustrated that said that the Cavs are exploring trade options on Collin Sexton. While it'd be incredibly stupid for the Cavaliers to trade Collin Sexton, in a weird way, it would also make sense. Look, Collin Sexton is one of the best young guards in the NBA. He's gotten better and better every year he's been in the league. He's coming off a year where he put up 24.3 points per game. Shot 47.5% from the field, 37.1% from beyond the arc. He's a great young player, make no mistake about it. The thing is, though, John Beilein kinda screwed him over. The year after Sexton was drafted, for some stupid reason he took Darius Garland. Nothing against Garland. I like Garland. Really good player. He's played over 50 games in his 2 NBA seasons. I like that. But him and Sexton can't play together. It's clear they can't. It was never gonna work. Moreover, now that you have the 3rd overall pick, you're kinda stuck. You just drafted a small forward in Isaac Okoro, so Scotty Barnes is off the table. At power forward, you have Kevin Love and Larry Nance Jr., guys who you can't move on from unless you're gonna pay teams to take them. I don't see the Cavs doing that. Some Cavs fans may want them to buy out Love. Maybe they want them to buy out Nance, but that's a lot of money. I just don't see the Cavaliers doing that. Is it possible? Yes. Could they give up a first and get a team to take Nance? Maybe. But I think Love and Nance are destined to be Cavs next year. So power forward's out, and center, you have Jarrett Allen. So Evan Mobley isn't going to work. Unless you're going to draft Jonathan Kuminga and move on from Love, Nance, or both of them, your only move is a guy like Jalen Green or Jalen Suggs. It doesn't make sense to have 3 young guards. So yeah, you kind of have to trade one of them. Is Garland the better guy to trade? The answer is yes, but here's the thing. You'll get more for Sexton. Sexton would get you an arm and a leg. I'm talking 3 first-round picks, at the bare minimum. That's how great he is. Garland isn't getting you that. You'll get 2. That's probably it. So what would you rather have? Colin Sexton and 2 extra firsts? Or Darius Garland and at least 3 firsts? I'll say this, the picks are probably more valuable to the Cavs. They're not going to contend anytime soon. They only won 22 games. They weren't good. Now, look, they moved up in the lottery, they got lucky. That's probably the impetus for this trade. If you're at 5, which is where the Cavs would be picking if everything went chalk, you can take Kuminga no problem, because you're not getting one of the big guards like Jalen Green or Jalen Suggs. Now that you moved up, you need to think to yourself, well, wait a minute, it's clear that Sexton and Garland can't play together. It's just not going to work. They're both too undersized. So, we can fix our backcourt by taking Green or Suggs. Either one of them will be fine. And we can get a bunch of picks to help us going forward. I get the logic. It's stupid to trade Sexton because you know that Sexton is going to be great for like the next 15 years. But the Cavs need to fix their roster now. They're going to have to pay Sexton now. If he doesn't fit their roster, and you covet picks more, I understand the logic. And the New York Knicks should be all over it. The Knicks, the Heat. I'll close this show out with some NFL vault talk. Specifically, the Steelers cutting David DeCastro and replacing him with Trey Turner, who just signed a 1-year deal with the Steelers worth $3 million. I mean, cutting DeCastro took everyone by surprise. No one saw that coming. You make it this far into June, you think you're safe. And the Steelers underwent a massive O-line overhaul this year. But as more details came out, it started to make a little bit of sense. David DeCastro was going to have surgery on his ankle to fix bone spurs. This is the 3rd surgery that he'll have on that ankle. He's 31 years old. There's no guarantee that he's going to bounce back and be the DeCastro of old. Is DeCastro a great right guard? The answer is yes. 6-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro. Don't kid yourself, he has a legitimate case for the Hall of Fame. But the Steelers weren't in a great cap position. They saved about $8 million by cutting DeCastro. That more than doubled their available cap space. So if you're not convinced that DeCastro's going to come back at 100%, and you're in cap hell, I understand the logic. I mean, I'll say this. Last year, according to Pro Football Focus, DeCastro had the worst year of his career except for his rookie year. He had just a 64.1 overall grade. He had a 50 run blocking grade. That's not going to cut it. I understand why the Steelers would move on from him. Did it catch me by surprise at first? The answer is yes. Then when more details came out, I understood it. Now, to replace him with Trey Turner is risky. I mean, Turner had a bunch of injuries last year for the Chargers. He only played in 9 games. And with the Chargers, he was not good. In fact, he was dreadful. He had just a 34.8 overall grade. That is about as bad can be. But when healthy, Turner's really good. Not great, but really good. DeCastro's better than Turner. But if you're sold on Turner's health, and you're not sold on DeCastro's health, and you need to save money anyway, I understand the logic. You take out the $3 million from the $8 million that the Steelers saved by cutting DeCastro. They saved $5 million with these 2 moves. That's a lot for the Steelers. They had just $7 million in cap space before they made these moves. Could this come back to bite the Steelers? Absolutely. I am very skeptical of them this year. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. In fact, I'll go as far as to say that this is Ben Roethlisberger's last year in Pittsburgh. Now, I'll say this about DeCastro. The New York Jets better take a look at him. Think about this offensive line for a minute. Mekhi Becton, Elijah Vera Tucker, Connor McGovern, David DeCastro, and Morgan Moses. If every one of those guys plays up to their ability, that's a really good offensive line. Zach Wilson would be doing backflips. But the Jets need to be careful. Will he be at 100% after this surgery? It's a risky gamble, but it's a gamble that you can take. Look, the Jets actually have depth at right guard. Like, if they add DeCastro, they'll have Alex Lewis, they'll have Greg Van Roten, they'll be okay. They have a lot of cap room. I understand that they haven't signed Morgan Moses yet, but when they do, they're going to cut George Fant, which is going to save them even more money. I'm fine with Chuma Edoga as the backup offensive tackle. I think Edoga's a fine backup. Better than Connor McDermott, I'll say that. It's worth the gamble for the Jets. At the very least, bring him in for a visit. Do your medical tests, and if he passes, sign him. And if it doesn't work out, you still have Van Roten, and you still have Lewis. It's worth a try. That's all I'll say. New York Yankees show comes your way Monday night. If the Islanders lose tonight, which I hope they don't, you'll get an Islanders off-season preview on Wednesday night. I do have a prior commitment on Tuesday night. Regular episodes of The Jacob Volk Show come your way every weekday afternoon. Until next time, I am Jacob Volk saying that the 1976 White Sox were so bad that by the 5th inning, Bill Veeck was selling hot dogs to go.